Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live. It is Thursday, December 16th, 2021. I am coming to you a little early because, frankly, I'm exhausted. Not feeling so well. I don't think it's anything COVID related or anything like that. Just, yeah, pretty burnt out. I've been, my normal state is going 100 miles an hour. And more recently, I've been going probably 50 miles an hour. Excuse me, my normal state is going 100 miles an hour. Recently, I've probably been going more like 150 miles an hour, trying to, keep on the ground reporting going. There's a lot. Colin could tell you there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff we're doing and working on and dealing with. So I've just been busy, and I'm also behind the scenes working on a pretty major, another major Flint water cover up story for a pretty big outlet, a different outlet this time. So just pretty exhausted. My goal is to get through his live stream sounding coherent. um, but to tell you the truth, I have not been particularly sleeping well. I just keep it real with my audience. I haven't been sleeping well, and I've pretty much been working give or take 8:39 in the morning to about 10:30 at night, uh, doing my normal reporting tasks while a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I won't bore you with. Hopefully, all of this additional work I've been doing now will pay off because we're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to kind of, handle on the business end of Status Coup to go into 2022 strong, in addition to hopefully, bringing on extra help in marketing and other areas. So that's my spiel. Have an interview with Kshama Sawant, the Seattle City Council member who I interviewed yesterday. She is today on the verge of defeating a right-wing recall that was put up against her in Seattle. The votes aren't final, but it looks very likely. And the organizers who organized the recall against her, it looks very like they even admitted that it looks like it's going to be defeated, and Kshama Sawant will remain a Seattle City Council member. So I interviewed her yesterday, so we're going to air that in just a few minutes. Also want to air some of our reporting from Amazon's Staten Island warehouse yesterday. If you didn't see it, because shockingly, Colin, could you come on for a second? Sorry to blow up Colin's spot. Hopefully he's got clothes on. Do you ever notice? Everybody knows Colin, editor / producer, Status Coup. You ever notice that when we do anything related to Amazon or Julian Assange, but let's focus on Amazon. When we do anything on Amazon, a live stream from the warehouse in Staten Island, even something, just in the studio, if we cut up shorter clips, like yesterday I was on the ground at the Staten Island warehouse covering a rally, we cut up a shorter clip. Do you ever notice how for some strange reason on YouTube, the views are anemic?
Yeah, and specifically when we do things like Amazon is when we sort of see that there's almost like it feels like a cap to our viewership where it was literally I was telling you about this yesterday. You were doing the live stream and we hit a certain point in viewers, and once we hit that cap, the viewership went down, even though I literally was watching the numbers go down in the viewership while simultaneously the likes went up by even more than the viewers went down. So there's some weird stuff whenever we do
Yeah.
Amazon. Is almost
Almost like something in YouTube's algorithm. If you report on Amazon's union busting, if you report on worker exploitation at Amazon, if you report on the unsafe conditions at Amazon, if you report on homeless workers that are working full time but sleeping in their cars in the parking lot because they're not making enough to afford to live. If you report on the fact that Amazon just kept a warehouse open and workers made to work during a tornado, for some reason, when you cover these things, boo, down the views go. Anyway, I digress. I'll bring Colin back on in a little bit because we have an exciting announcement this holiday season. You can now give the gift of Status Coup by gift memberships. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So before I play the Kshama Sawant interview, please smash that like button. We got 75 people watching right now. I need every single one of you. Smash that like button. Share this live stream. Sharing is caring. We need to get this out to more people. After the Kshama Sawant interview, I will be we'll be airing some of my reporting on the ground yesterday from Staten Island, where I interviewed workers on a whole range of things. This is the warehouse in Staten Island, New York, where they are trying to win the first unionized Amazon in America. So I'll have information on that. We'll play some of the clips. I also will tell you about a conversation I had off camera after I was live, which is very interesting, related to, why is elected progressives seemingly not willing to touch this particular union drive? These Amazon workers trying to unionize in Staten Island. We'll see. We'll see. So I'm going to have that. Then we're going to address shocker. Looks like the Build Back Better plan, which I call the Build Back Bullshit plan. Excuse my French, swear jar. Please hit me with the super chats. We need you. We need your support. Super chat. Also going to push folks to sign up as a member today. The Build Back Bullshit plan seems to be dead. So it seems that the progressives who naively or cowardly voted for the bipartisan infrastructure deal, claiming they were voting for it under the premise that Joe Biden promised, the president promised, that he was going to deliver Joe Manchin's vote for the other bill, the Build Back Better plan. Well, it seems like they got sold a bill of goods, and Biden, in fact, is not delivering Joe Manchin's vote. And it looks like Build Back Better, unless something radically changes, is basically, well, I don't want to say dead, but on life support and not happening anytime soon. So we will cover that. So as I said, we interviewed Kshama Sawant yesterday. Kshama Sawant, socialist city council member in Seattle. Every corporation in Seattle and frankly America has gone hard to defeat her. They've tried to get her out of office in normal elections, and Amazon and other corporations and right-wingers were behind an effort to recall her out of office in Seattle. They basically petitioned and obtained from courts the ability to have a recall election of Kshama Sawant under some fairly, in my view, bogus reasons to recall her. So we went over it yesterday. We also went over kind of the national landscape in terms of the Democratic Party continuing to abandon any promises they made, continuing to negotiate against themselves, continuing to strip down legislation to basically nothing, and then try and distract you with Trump and January 6th and the right-wing authoritarian threat, which there is 100% a growing right-wing authoritarian threat in this country, and fascism in this country, and a growing white supremacy movement and a growing conspiracy movement. The problem is we don't actually have an opposition party to any of that, because the Democratic Party is also a right-wing party, just more woke and more verbally or rhetorically working class, but actually in substance right wing. So without further ado, please, again, smash that like button, share this live stream. Here is part of my interview. There will be a second part of the interview tomorrow on our Rockfin exclusive broadcast. Again, we are on Rockfin on Fridays at 4:00 Eastern. So a second part, which was really juicy with Kshama Sawant, will be on our Rockfin show tomorrow at 4:00. But here is an extended interview, about 25 minutes, with Seattle City Council member on her defeating the right-wing recall against her and other things. It's Jordan. I'm delighted to be joined by Kshama Sawant, Seattle City Council member. And at the time we're recording this, I think we could safely say you have defeated a recall effort against you in Seattle. It was a recall that, by all accounts, seem to have a lot of right-wing funding and sources to defeat you. It's not the first time there's been attempts to, for lack of a better word, get rid of you. Can you kind of just, for people that don't know, what was the basis of the recall attempt against you, the stated basis, shall we say? Why was there this campaign to recall you?
As you correctly said, Jordan, this is far from the first time that my office, our socialist city council office, has faced these kinds of attempts to remove us from City Hall by not only the right wing, but by big business entities like Amazon, the major corporate executives and CEOs, and the Chamber of Commerce. And every time they have failed, we have won 3 elections, and we now have defeated this recall. Very likely the election will be certified in our favor on Friday. We're still curing ballots to make sure that working class ballots whose signatures were in dispute are also getting counted, so that nobody who has voted gets disenfranchised. But I think we have apparently won, and we have defeated big business and the right wing in their attempt to use, as you alluded to, trumped up charges against me personally in order to push back against the success of working class movements in Seattle. And so those charges, there were 3 charges that they had made up against us. One of them was related to a really inspiring rally that we did during the Black Lives Matter protest at City Hall. Another was related to me speaking at a rally in solidarity with Black Lives Matter activists in the vicinity of corporate mayor, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin's house. And the third one was related to the support my office gave to the Tax Amazon movement that we helped lead, that socialist alternative, my organization and I helped to lead to victory last year, taxing the largest corporations of Seattle like Amazon, so that we are able to fund Green New Deal projects and the expansion of affordable social housing. And so really, these charges, they're, as I said, they were trumped up in nature, but at the same time, what they reveal is also important. It's no coincidence that 2 of the 3 charges were related to my participation in and solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. The recall against my office is part of the nationwide backlash, the reaction against this incredible movement that happened last year, with 26 million American people, especially young people, marching on the streets in multiracial working class solidarity against police repression, against racism, and against oppression. And that made it the largest ever street protest movement in US history. The ruling class in the US is afraid of these kinds of movements. And so we should not be surprised that there is a reaction. And the recall against us was at least partly part of that reaction, but it was also a backlash against the victories we have won here in Seattle.
It strikes me, it has a bit of a Maria Antoinette vibe, like the charges against you that you dared participate in a protest in the vicinity of the mayor's home. I mean, you were not suggesting, nor were people there suggesting any form of violence, impeding on her private property. She's the mayor. She's a public servant. I can't think of a reason that would be something to lose your city council seat because you participated with the people in a protest, which technically you're still allowed to do in America, of the mayor. The other thing was that you allowed the people to come to the city hall. Again, it just seems like this aristocratic, very elite mentality that how dare you rally the people to come anywhere near the people's house or the mayor's house.
You're totally right. I mean, there is this whole thing smacks of such elitism, and also is a real reminder of how deeply out of touch both the ruling class themselves, the billionaire class, but also their political representatives are from the reality on the ground for tens of millions of American people. So for them to find it so objectionable that ordinary people, especially our Black community members, were protesting somewhere in the vicinity of an elected official's house is just incredible. And look at the contrast as well. We are being accused of uh, somehow hindering the safety of an elected official, which of course did not happen, because this was a peaceful protest. And in fact, it was a protest not just of activists in general. It was specifically a protest that was organized by the families of people who have been killed at the hands of the police. So there were women and children who were leading the protest, and elderly relatives of the people who've been killed at the hands of the police. So it's really, it makes me aghast at how, the contrast between the elite and the ordinary people who are fighting for their basic right to live and not be killed at the hands of the police. And furthermore, the contrast deepens when you think about what actions this mayor herself has taken. This mayor not only has presided over a police department that has continued its decades-long practice of racial profiling and excessive use of force, so much so that the department has been under a Department of Justice consent decree for years, over a decade. But not only that, during the BLM protests last summer, under Mayor Durkan's watch, the police department, which is directed by her, unleashed an just an unbelievable amount of tear gas, rubber bullets, and other dangerous weapons against peaceful protesters. I was one of the people who was tear gassed. And so for them, for the elite to talk about safety, it's just a joke. It's an absurdity when ordinary people are facing such dangerous situations. And the protests at City Hall, by the way, one of the charges that's related to that, what's interesting about this is that it was such an inspiring 1 hour protest, again, peaceful protest, that it helped us win key legislation from my office in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, which was to make it illegal for the police department to use weapons like tear gas on peaceful protests. So a very important historic victory came out of that rally, and it's no surprise that the elite are angry about it.
And I also think it should be said, you were one of the only that I could find elected officials that were fighting against evictions throughout this pandemic and other, horrible measures that to the establishment Democrats in Seattle and elsewhere, they didn't want to do, or they had to be forced to do, or even the federal ban, which I went on the road and was able to show had more loopholes than a roller coaster in it. There were still millions of people being evicted throughout the pandemic. You were fighting for protections of the workers throughout the pandemic, which to me, based on Mayor Durkan and others elected officials in Seattle, they did not have the same vigilance that you had for those protections.
Oh, not only did they not have the same vigilance, as you were alluding, Jordan, many of these Democrats have actually been in the pockets of corporate landlords, and they were actually opposing the eviction moratorium. They didn't succeed in keeping us from instituting the eviction moratorium simply because working people have been so angry during the pandemic that they absolutely refused to accept not having a moratorium on evictions. And it was because of that, because of the Democrats' realization that if they didn't actually support these evictions, if they didn't vote yes on them, those pieces of legislation, then they are going to face a steep political price from working people's anger, and that is the only reason this happened. And in fact, the eviction moratoriums in Seattle would not have been in place if thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of people had not signed many petitions. One of those petitions was initiated by my office, but we were far from the only ones fighting for it. There were so many renters on the ground, including tenant protection organizations, who are fighting for the eviction moratorium, and we won them despite the backroom opposition by corporate landlords and the Democrats who represent the interests of corporate landlords, even though they might, the progressive Democrats might murmur things in support of renters. And in fact, what's stunning about this whole year, Jordan, is that despite the fact that we were fending off this recall attack from big business and the right wing, this year, we managed to make this the most successful year for renters' rights victories in Seattle. Through my office and through renter organizing, we won mandating landlords to give 6 months notice for any rent increase, which is a major achievement. And another absolutely historic victory is mandating that landlords need to give 3 months rent as compensation for any tenant they displace by a rent increase of 10% or more. So this is not quite rent control, but it is getting there. And also this year we made huge steps forward for the rent control legislation that I've brought forward, that we will be fighting to win next year. But we've got 15,000 Seattle working people that have signed the petition. And you know what's shameful about this whole saga, about the struggle that working people have faced during the pandemic, on top of the struggles they already faced because of just the nature of capitalism, is that not only have these Democrats not fought for the things that working people need, just this past Monday, every Democrat on the city council, and there's 8 Democrats and there's 1 socialist, me, every Democrat on the Seattle City Council voted to end the hazard pay, end, mind you, not begin, end the hazard pay for grocery workers. This is absolutely shameful. Keeping the hazard pay for the grocery workers is the least they could have done. But in fact, they should have expanded the hazard pay for all essential workers. But instead, now they have taken it away from them. I mean, I have no words to describe it.
I think there's a really interesting and telling number. Looking at the numbers right now of your recall, you are up against a really hard task, because there was just an election in November for the mayor and other elected officials in Seattle. So to then have to ask and get people to come out once again to vote no on your recall, that's a really hard hill to climb. But you and I'm sure activists and supporters that were working on your campaign against the recall, you had turnout is at 53% for this recall. That's only 2 points less than turnout in November for the actual mayoral District 3, which you represent, I should have said. So 53% turnout in a December recall after the normal November elections. It's just a difference of only 1,200 ballots. Maybe there will be more ballots once everything's counted. But right now, I mean, you basically had the full turnout in your district for the November election in a recall in December. What do you attribute getting that high turnout to defeat this recall?
Just firstly, just for your listeners who might not know why this was a December election, it was a classic example of how you don't need conspiracy theories to explain how the system works. This is what happens in reality, how every institution under capitalism got together to make sure that they offered the most undemocratic election possible for this recall, because they don't want working people, renters, communities of color to vote in large numbers. So in other words, it is voter suppression, what they did by putting this election in December. And this was only possible because the Washington State Supreme Court unanimously voted to actually delayed the ruling by 3 months, which allowed the recall campaign to put this on the December ballot rather than being on the November ballot. And the only way we were able to overcome these massive obstacles and win despite everything thrown at us, including a very undemocratic election, including voter suppression, is because we never backed down. Contrary to the conventional logic for liberals and the left, that when you get attacked by the right, when you get attacked by big business, you need to soften your you need to tone it down, you need to not rock the boat. And that's the approach, unfortunately, that candidates like Nina Turner used. And you saw what happened. The big business candidates and the Democratic establishment will go absolutely ruthlessly against you. So the last thing you should do is back down. And that's what we did not do. We refused to back down. We called the recall for what it was, and we made sure that everybody in District 3 voters were very clear that if you supported the recall, you are supporting the right wing, you are supporting voter suppression, you are supporting big business in their efforts to try and undermine our future efforts for rent control. But not only that you might let them open the door to take away the victories that we have won, including the Amazon tax, the $15 minimum wage, and unprecedented renter rights victories. So it's not a question of whether you agree with me as a socialist on every single policy, but do you stand on the right side of history, which is the left side? If you stand against voter suppression, against big business domination in Seattle, then you should vote no on the recall. So we never backed down from our messaging about how racist and right-wing and big business backed this recall is, which was absolutely pivotal to us winning. But not only that, we went on the offensive. We did not fight a defensive battle. As I said, we went on the offensive. And in fact, we ended up winning more renters' rights victories through our city council office than ever before. This is a real contrast to the self-described progressives who actually lost badly in November in Seattle to the conservative and right-wing candidates. So really, there are lessons to be learned here.
And can you kind of talk about Amazon? What was their role, even if indirect, in propping this recall up? Because obviously Amazon has been fiercely fighting and opposed to you for years. You led the charge for a modest, kind of head tax on Amazon, where I think it was $250 per employee to go towards affordable housing. I mean, I've been to Seattle. I've seen the homelessness, just crisis pre-pandemic. God knows what it is now during the pandemic. What role did Amazon specifically play in trying to get you removed?
As some of your viewers might know, in 2019, Amazon and Jeff Bezos, they played an outsized role in trying to influence the elections. I mean, they both prioritized trying to get me out of City Hall when we were up for re-election in 2019, but also they went after every single progressive candidate, even milked those progressives, because they really, they Amazon and the main executives, the so-called S team of Jeff Bezos, they were really overconfident, and they thought they were going to do a corporate takeover of City Hall. They spent millions of dollars against me and other progressive candidates. And in the last weeks of the election, in October of 2019, Amazon threw down $1 million money bomb against our campaign, against my candidacy, in their attempt to defeat us, and they completely failed. And so this recall campaign against us this year was, in every sense, their attempt to do a do-over of the election that they lost in 2019, despite everything, every tool that they used against us. And so I think they, among big business elite, and I wasn't a fly on the wall at their discussions, but undoubtedly the wealthiest of the wealthy in our city, they decided that it didn't work for them in terms of their messaging, for Amazon to be front and center, for Jeff Bezos to be prominent in the attack against us. And so I think while they had many S team members and executives from Amazon donating to the recall, they didn't come out as prominent supporters of the recall. Instead, what happened is that corporate landlords became the main spokespeople for the recall campaign. But at the end of the day, we should be under no illusion. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, all these major corporations, including corporate landlords, they all have in common their agenda to defeat any kind of working class campaign, and they have failed again.
Let me ask you, because, obviously take a day or two once it's certified to celebrate. But I mean, Seattle is kind of ground zero for gentrification, this new Gilded Age that we're seeing all over the country. You spoke about the police barbarism, but the landlords basically owning city council, Amazon's effect, Boeing's effect. Now you see federally, the child tax credit, that temporary child tax credit, is ending. You see from above, President Manchin is putting a nix on the already insufficient, so-called Build Back Better plan. Federal unemployment has already ended months ago. That was expanded during the pandemic. There's now President Biden is expediting federal student loan repayment. I mean, essentially, you have all of these things that were temporary that should be permanent, and there should be more, ending at a time when the economy is still very vulnerable, at a time when we have all this window dressing. The jobs are coming back. They're the same low-paying, insecure jobs as before. So can you kind of talk about the fight forward now in Seattle for all of these kind of colliding factors?
I think you described really well the situation that we're heading into, especially in the context of the midterm elections next year, that working people, because of the scale of the crisis and because of the overall mood in society, which is now starting to not accept the status quo. I think all of that played a role in forcing the Democratic establishment to put in place some measures, at least. And of course, the temporary measures were part of that. The stimulus checks were part of that. And they were certainly forced to do something. But it's also clear now that they are not going to do anything more than they are absolutely politically, they feel forced to concede on. And so it's going to be inevitable that, and it's already happening, that working people are starting to question, especially young people are starting to question, how is it that, we were able to defeat Trump and then we got a Democrat in the White House. We have a Democratic majority in the House. And how is it that, and Senate, and how is it that we are not actually getting the kind of measures put in place that we need in our society? And working people, especially the most politicized amongst us, have seen how the Democrats in Congress have failed at every single thing that they promised. $15 an hour, Medicare for all. They didn't exactly promise that, but obviously it's an extremely popular demand. Even a majority of Republican voters support Medicare for all. The Democrats have failed at every single thing. And now, as you said, now we're heading into a context where many of the temporary relief measures are going to be taken away from workers. It's inevitable that there will be questioning and consternation among working people, not to mention a real anger starting to build up. But it's also going to be a real it's going to be a point where we on the left have to think seriously about this and understand that having that kind of anger bubbling over is not going to be enough to win victories. We've seen what's happened. So what we need mostly in terms of next steps, the most urgent thing really is for serious debates to happen inside labor unions, inside all kinds of progressive movement discussions about what strategy actually works. And this year's lessons should be used to examine that. Why is it that the squad have, really, despite the fact that they are progressive, despite the fact that they themselves do face attacks from the right, why is it that they have failed to deliver on any of the things that they have promised? Why is it that they have continued to use a strategy of appeasement towards Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden rather than using their offices to build movements, turning outwards and turning out workers to fight for the things that they need? Why is it that AOC has not called for working class people to be mobilized in West Virginia and Arizona and key states so that it really provides a pushback against the Joe Manchins and the Kristen Sinemas in the Democratic Party? So all of these questions, if we don't debate these questions and if we don't ask ourselves what kind of party do working people need, it is going to be extremely difficult to make any progressive headway. And we need a similar conversation led by rank and file inside the labor movement. We need to be done with the ideas of business unionism, which has really prevailed inside the labor movement for the last 4 decades, where the idea, even well-meaning labor leaders often will think that, we need to somehow make peace with the bosses and only sparingly go on strike. No, the question should be posed clearly. What is the fighting strategy that is going to be needed for workers to win victories? How will Amazon workers, warehouse workers form successful unions? These are questions that need to be discussed. And how did the Starbucks workers in Buffalo succeed in building a union? These are the things we need to talk about. And I'll tell you one last thing about this, which is crucial. If we don't do these things, then we will unfortunately continue to see dangerous headway continuing to be made by the right wing. And either Trump or a Trump-like figure is likely to emerge as a contender for the presidential election the next time if we don't fight now, because the left is leaving a vacuum for the right populist ideas to develop, and that's the most dangerous thing.
So that was one part of my interview with Kshama Sawant. We'll be airing the second part tomorrow on our exclusive Rockfin premium show. Again, we are live on Rockfin exclusively on Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern time. So you could definitely sign up for our Rockfin before tomorrow to watch the other part of my interview with Kshama Sawant. We will be discussing the squad tomorrow. Tomorrow at 4:00 Eastern time. So definitely tune in for that. We'll also be interviewing Michael Lighty. You might not know this. Hold on. That is the wrong picture. That's not Michael Lighty. You might not know this, but the Trump administration tried to privatize Medicare. And guess what? The Biden administration is continuing to try and privatize Medicare. He said we can't afford Medicare for all. Now, the Biden administration is continuing the Trump administration's efforts to privatize Medicare. Isn't that wonderful? So we'll have an interview with Michael Lighty, who is one of the top experts in the country on Medicare for all. So we talk about the Biden administration's efforts to privatize Medicare, as well as where is the fight for Medicare for all. And we discuss, frankly, progressives' lack of fight or lack of hardball on Medicare for all. So tune in for Rockfin tomorrow. I want to move on, and I will read the super chats at the end of this stream. So keep those super chats coming. I greatly, greatly appreciate all of the super chats. We really, really appreciate your support. I want to move on. If you missed it, I was live yesterday on the ground reporting from the Amazon Staten Island warehouse, where workers are continuing to fight to win a union. It would be the first unionized Amazon workforce in the country. So I was there yesterday for kind of a makeshift last-minute rally. I spoke with workers about Amazon's continued unsafe conditions during the pandemic. I also talked to them about Amazon trying to reinstate their phone ban, where they before the pandemic had a ban where workers could not bring their phones into work. Kind of a problem when there's tornadoes and hurricanes and a pandemic. Workers kind of need their phones for updates. They're now trying to re-implement that ban. And I also talked to the workers to get their reaction on the horrific, tragic events in Illinois, in Edwardsville, Illinois, where 6 Amazon workers died working through a tornado that they should have never been made to work through. So if you missed it, I wanted to show you kind of a couple of my interviews with workers. Again, this was at the warehouse yesterday in Staten Island. Status Coup members fund this on-the-ground reporting. It's not cheap. I need to pay my camera person just to afford the live view, which is what we use to go live on the ground. It costs us $700 a month for the data plan and access to the server. So please, please, if you can, this holiday season, sign up as a Status Coup member to continue funding our on-the-ground reporting. Here is some of the interviews from yesterday, specifically workers reacting to 6 workers that died in Illinois working through a tornado, which should be a scandal that Amazon remained open and had workers working through a tornado. Yes, there was warnings for days on this tornado. The company's trying to pretend, it turned last minute and there was no warnings. There was plenty of warnings, but Amazon put profit and continuing to keep the warehouse open over people as they normally do. Here's kind of a replay of just some of the interviews. A couple days after 6 workers died in Edwardsville, Illinois, it's come out since that they were made to work. I was just reading to the audience that one of the workers tragically, this is just horrific. Larry Verdon, who died, texted his girlfriend or wife, sorry, I don't know if they were married, Amazon won't let us leave. Yeah. And he died. There's also talk now that Amazon is re-implementing a phone ban where they won't let workers bring in their phone. Kind of important if there's a tornado and weather emergencies. Just your initial reaction to, these workers were made to work during a tornado. Amazon's trying to pretend there wasn't much of a warning, but there were warnings of this tornado for days.
Yeah, Amazon says themselves that workers need their phones only for emergency use only. So if you note that, then in pandemic or not, you need a situation in an emergency. And in these emergency situations, they continue to choose profit over people and capital and keep their workers there or have them there in the first place. If they knew there was going to be a storm that was going to be severe, shouldn't have had them there in the first place.
And by the way, you guys know this well. It wasn't a tornado, but they kept the warehouse open during Hurricane Ida, which ravaged New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut, all parts of the Northeast. I got videos sent to me that water was coming through the front door, but they kept the warehouse open.
Yeah, a worker literally lost their car driving here for fear of losing their own job, risk their own car and livelihood just to get to work.
Well, just to set the record straight, the whole situation was horrible. There was no need for those people to be there. I feel that Amazon has done that when I was in the building as well. Like they've gathered us all together in supposedly a quote-unquote safe, secure area. But evidently that isn't, the truth of the matter. I mean, it's just horrifying. I think that all employees should be led home. The employees were trapped here during the flood earlier in the months out here this year.
Hurricane Ida,
Yeah, and I mean, enough is enough. And yes, we are against it, and we are in our own way protesting, towards what they're doing. Enough is enough. When do our lives matter first? When do the employees that slave and make Jeff all his money, when do their lives matter? And that's...
Right after this, actually, right after that tornado collapse where 6 workers died, Bezos sent another one of his space shuttles.
Yeah, he sends another space shuttle up to space. He's got Strahan on there, all these people, and it's usually it's all a publicity thing if you want to talk about the space thing to me.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate because that isn't the first time you hear of an incident like that as far as workers having to come in during harsh weather. It's been happening since 2015. Every year that I can remember that it was a snowstorm or a hurricane, we still had to come in to work if it was our assigned day. So, the fact that this time it took multiple workers' lives, it just shows how greedy this corporation is. They'll do anything they can to get a dollar bill, even if it involves sacrificing their own workers' lives. And it's just really sad to see. And it just really makes us motivated more, as ALU to continue our fight and make sure that we win this union, because, the fact that they have this no cell phone policy, really, it irks me, because a situation like that of a tornado, this poor worker just reaching out to his wife, just telling them, Amazon won't let me leave. And it's like almost like a cry for help. And there was no alternative for him, and it's just so sad.
You were made to work during Hurricane Ida, during snowstorms. What's your reaction to, what honestly sounds kind of scandalous?
It's anybody who's worked here long enough when there's been hazardous weather knows that they never close this building. Doesn't matter how bad the weather is. So I've driven to work in blizzards where I can't even see out my front window. In August, we had those 2 hurricanes back to back, and I wasn't affected, thankfully, but there are people I know who, they lost everything in that storm, and they still had to come to work the next day through these flooded roads. I know a manager whose car was flooded, and he couldn't even get to work, but they still made everybody come in, and it's part of their whole, we can never shut down, especially not during peak. They got to make money, and it doesn't really matter what we have to say about it. We have no power in that.
Peak's the holiday season?
Yes.
Let me ask you, right now, there's been a lot of focus put back on the fact that they're trying to re-implement a phone ban where workers can't have their phones. Kind of important to have your phones to get updates on tornadoes, hurricanes, a pandemic. Can you kind of talk about, it seems like they've been trying to loosen COVID restrictions and re-implement pre-pandemic things like a phone ban.
Yeah, so before COVID, you couldn't have your cell phone in the building. You had to leave it in your car or in a locker. During the pandemic, there's a lot of people, number one, the turnover is so high here that there's people who who work here with their phones, and they don't even know what it's like to not have their phone in there. Yeah, so this whole pandemic, we've had our phones, and we still broke records in this building. We're like the top performing building in the network, and across Amazon, Amazon is still outperforming expectations. The stock price is still going up, and the thing is, they would like this to be like a prison. You come in and you're pretty much disconnected from the outside world. But people are really accustomed now to the fact that they can have their phones, they can connect with their families on the outside. If there's an emergency, they have their phone with them. And they don't have to be completely disconnected from everybody for their 10 or 12-hour shift.
One more time, we don't get it. Shut it down. Let me hear you. We don't get it. Shut it down. Let me fighting for cell phones. And $30 an hour.
So that was that was some of my interviews yesterday from Amazon Staten Island warehouse, where they're continuing their fight to form a union, and spoke with workers about that and a whole lot of other things. You might have not seen the live stream because, shockingly, it seems that when I am live on the topic of Amazon or Julian Assange, for some reason, boom, viewership tanks. Wouldn't you know? So the whole live stream is up. You could watch the full thing. It was about an hour last night at Amazon Staten Island warehouse. And I really, really appreciate everybody's support. Members, Status Coup membership is how we fund this on-the-ground reporting. If you haven't noticed, in independent media, there's a whole lot of channels that do a whole lot of hot takes and commentary, often about other people's commentary and interpersonal fighting, this channel versus that channel. There's not that many outlets that I'm aware of that actually go out there and like cover these things on the ground and interview people and interview workers and cover union fights. We were on the ground in Iowa and Illinois covering the John Deere strikes. They got a new contract. We were on the ground in Buffalo covering the Starbucks workers trying to unionize. They just won the first unionized Starbucks in America. We covered hospital workers that were striking in Buffalo at Mercy Hospital. They just got a new contract. We covered India Walton's election. She didn't win, but I think it was important to cover anyway. So you guys are what is funding this. And frankly, we need to grow our membership in order to fund not only the reporting, but frankly, if I can't expand, if I can't get enough funding to hire more people, I'm gonna burn out. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I'm at peak burnout. It can't just be me as the main reporter covering every single event. I can't tell you how many. I'm not asking for a violin, but I can't tell you how many activists and organizations reach out to me every day. Can you cover this? Can you come cover this protest? Can you come cover this event? Can you cover this? Can you cover that? I just can't do it all. I can't. I'm hoping to be able to hire an additional reporter in the new year, but that would require more funding. I would like to hire a marketing person, funding. I would like to hire a producer, funding. So, for those of you that it's within your budget, you could become a member for $5 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join, $5 a month. And I guess now would be a good opportunity, Colin, if you could come on to explain. If you're already a member, and it's within your budget, you could actually buy a gift membership for Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever floats your boat, and you could buy a gift membership for a friend, a family member, your dog, whoever you want. How do they do it, Colin?
Yeah, all you do is you can go to the new website, StatusCoupMember.com, and just click on store there, or you can click, there's a link in the description right now where StatusCoupMember.com/store, and you click there and choose which membership level you want, and then you add it to your card and buy it like normal. And the only extra step you got to do is just send us an email with the email of your friend or family member or whomever that you want the account to belong to, and we'll send them an email of how to sign up with their new membership.
So since I am a visual creature, can you show people how to do this? Could you log on to StatusCoupMember.com so they see where you go and all that?
Yeah. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so if you go right here to the website, you just click on the store button right here, and you have your two options here: 1 year of Status Slayer membership or 1 year of Cootie Champion membership. So you just click which one you want, add it to your cart, and then you just go to your cart and check out like normal. Put in whatever information and all that you need, and that's pretty much it.
And then they would email info@StatusCoup.
Correct. You'll email info@statuscoup.com with the email that you want attached to it. You'll get a confirmation email once you purchase that also reminds you to do that extra step as well. If you run into any issues as well, that's the same email you contact for any issues, info@statuscoup.com, which I'm usually able to help pretty quick.
Awesome. Okay. I hope we see people. Hey, maybe your neoliberal auntie, if you give her the gift, you paid for it. Maybe if she's a Hillary supporter or one of these Biden stands, maybe she'll watch us and get educated. If you got a right-wing uncle, maybe he'll watch us and get educated. All it takes is 1 or 2 videos that they watch, maybe watching our on-the-ground reporting, and they might ask, wait a minute, how come I've never seen this on Fox News? How come I've never seen this on MSNBC? I want to know more about this status coup. So you can educate your family, friends, even animals by giving them the gift of Status Coup this holiday season. Again, you could buy a $5 membership that amounts to $60 for the year membership, or you could buy a $10 membership, which accounts for $120. And that is for friends, family, whomever you want, even your enemies. Buy them a membership. Thank you, Colin. So before I go, I want to update, because it seems that shockingly, and Colin, I'm sending you this too. Hold on, because this just came out. This tweet I want to show. So shockingly, it seems that if you have the NBC News article, Colin, it seems that the Build Back Better plan, is, shall we say, I don't want to call it permanently dead, but the Build Back Better plan seems to be on life support. Democrats. Colin, could you actually send me that? Because I sent it to you, but I can't find the link, of course, to this NBC News article. If you have it, send it to me, because I can't find it, of course. So it seems that the Build Back Better plan that progressives, Democrats hope to build back better. NBC News. Hold on. Okay, I got it. Democrats' hopes dim that Build Back Better will pass before the new year. Democrats in the Senate are preparing to miss their self-imposed deadline to pass President Joe Biden's $1.7 trillion social safety net before the end of the year, according to 4 sources familiar with planning by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. So started at $6 trillion, went down to 3.5, then 1.7. Now, maybe by Groundhog's Day. The decision to try again next year is based on simple math. Schumer doesn't have the 50 votes needed to pass the legislation, thanks to Senator Joe Manchin, who remains a holdout. Talks between Manchin and Biden are going, quote, very poorly, according to a source familiar with the talks. The decision to delay is also in part because Senate Democrats haven't finished negotiating the bill. Provisions on state and local taxes and the methane rule remain undecided. Senate Democrats also haven't finished clearing all the procedural hurdles. 2 congressional sources said a vote would be delayed until March. Oh, boy. The sources also asked to speak anonymously in order to provide frank assessments of internal discussions. Asked whether his resistance to the bill was related to the inclusion of child tax credit payments, Manchin told reporters that, quote, I've always been for child tax credits. We voted for it many times. This is bullshit, he added. You're bullshit. That's Manchin who said that. The last of the child tax credit payments goes out Wednesday, unless the Senate can pass a safety net bill before the new year. Schumer, however, has not signaled a public willingness to throw in the towel. The president and Senator Manchin are having many discussions, and we're waiting to see the outcome of those. Oh, boy. Colin, if you have the tweets from Manu Raju, he's a CNN reporter. He said, spoke with Manchin tonight about why Biden, spoke with Manchin tonight about why Biden are at odds over Build Back Better. Manchin said the bill must not exceed $1.75 trillion, said that he's objecting to a 1-year extension of the child tax credit because he believes it hides the true cost since will likely be extended. Said it should be 10 years. But extending it for the next decade would blow up the price tag and would require wholesale change of the bill. I don't even need to read it anymore. It's all such nonsense and bullshit. So, folks, I said I gave the squad credit when they were holding out, including Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, so the squad plus. I gave them credit when, for many weeks and a couple months, they were holding out. They refused to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure deal. I thought it showed some spine for once. I think it showed some organization. But at the same time, I said to you, yeah, there's still a chance that they're going to fold. And if they do fold, I will bring scorched earth against them. Well, shockingly, they did fold. And interestingly enough, they folded with the talking point that we are going to trust President Biden, who has told us he will deliver Joe Manchin's vote. That President Biden, a serial liar, who has lied about his vote on the Iraq War. He lied about being arrested, going to apartheid South Africa when Nelson Mandela was freed. Lied about palling around with segregationists. Lied about his. He's lied about many, many things. Lied about his health care plan. I mean, he's a serial liar. They said that they were ultimately voting for the infrastructure deal because they believe that President Biden, who's basically been in fetal position for many, many months, he cannot do anything as President Manchin and President Sinema obstruct pretty much everything. And by the way, I don't think it's only Manchin and Sinema. I think they are cover for a lot of other Democrats who don't want these policies. And Manchin and Sinema are just more willing to take the arrows and have no shame about their blatant corruption. But Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and a lot of other elected progressives that for months, they held fast. They would not vote for the infrastructure deal without the $3.5 trillion reconciliation deal. That slowly started dissipating. They started moving further and further down as far as the price tag that they were willing to accept. And ultimately, they said, we are going to vote for the infrastructure deal because we trust that President Biden will be able to deliver a vote from Joe Manchin. Interestingly enough, they changed their position and folded on the infrastructure deal after Terry McAuliffe lost the governor's race in Virginia, after New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, well, he won by over 2 points, but it looked like he was going to lose. It was a lot closer than people in New Jersey thought. And the media started blaming it on the progressives, blaming Terry McAuliffe's loss on progressives, blaming the fact that New Jersey was so close on progressives. When there was a little bit of heat, blaming the progressives for Democrats' losses, and blaming the progressives for not voting for the infrastructure deal, because the media made it seem if only we passed that infrastructure deal months prior, Terry McAuliffe would have won and Democrats would have done a lot better, even though polls in Virginia showed Terry McAuliffe lost mostly on education and the fact that schools were closed for too long in the eyes of a lot of suburban Virginia voters. But Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and a lot of other progressives, they decided to vote for the infrastructure bill because, call it what you want, either call them naive, call them spineless, say they intentionally did this and knew they were going to fold and always planned on folding at the last minute. Call it whatever you want. They got hoodwinked. They got embarrassed. And this is pathetic. This Build Back Better plan has been stripped down to the point where, honestly, the biggest thing will be a coupon to Denny's in the Build Back Better plan. The main the main signature proposal, universal pre-K. Well, reporting has come out, it's not so universal. And the federal government's only going to be covering X amount of it, not the full amount. And states will have the option, like Obamacare, not to implement it, because the federal government's funding of it will year after year go down and go down further until 6 years into the plan, the federal government's contribution goes to zero. So there's no guarantee that Republican states would implement this universal pre-K plan. And also there's no guarantee that a lot of Democrat states will implement this universal pre-K plan. So that's the signature policy, and it's not even universal. Then you have Medicare expansion. As of now, only hearing, no dental and vision. You have the child care portion of it that seems to be means tested. And now you have Manchin is basically blocking the Build Back Better plan because he doesn't want, he says, well, this is fishy. And we know that the child tax credit, if we extend it for a year, it's definitely not going to only be extended for a year. And the Democrats, my colleagues, I'm speaking as Manchin, will try to keep extending it and keep extending it and keep extending it because, we don't want children to be fed. We don't want to provide, permanent funding for hungry children, for, poorer families, this and that. But, I just voted for a $765 billion military budget. We don't have to worry about that. That could be permanent. We'll give that permanently every year. We'll probably be adding it to $800 billion next year. But Joe Manchin is going to nickel and dime on the child tax credit and other things. And by the way, I think the child tax credit is a neoliberal policy anyway. It's better than nothing, but it's neoliberal policy. It's $300 a month, I believe, per child. It's been helpful to a lot of families. By some experts, they say it cut poverty in half. The problem that I always said, oh, great, we're cutting poverty in half for 12 months. It's about to expire. So it's absolutely pathetic. And I want to show you this Pramila Jayapal tweet that literally I was retweeting it. I was about to respond to her when the Amazon video ended, so I haven't responded yet. But Pramila Jayapal just tweeted out, 2/3 of voters want Build Back Better passed. What are we supposed to tell them if the child tax credit payments end, prescription drug prices continue to skyrocket, and the climate crisis worsens? Sorry, the Senate decided to deal with it later. Oh boy. And I get grief I get attacks from both sides. I get attacks from those saying I defend the squad and progressives too much. And then I get attacks when I criticize them that I'm not being fair. So let me answer Pramila Jayapal. Colin, if you could put that tweet up. She asks, if you could put it back up. She asks, well, what should we tell? What should we tell people why this didn't pass? You should tell them that you, the leader of the progressive caucus in Congress, that for a short period held your caucus in line, held firm, held 15 to 20, possibly even more than that, progressives firm to vote no on the infrastructure deal without an actual substantive Build Back Better Act. You should tell them that because you don't have a spine, because you're incredibly naive, because you trusted a serial liar who palled around with segregationists in the 70s, who has lied about him pushing the crime bill, which did create mass incarceration, but he claims it didn't, who lied about his support for the Iraq War, and that he not only voted for the Iraq War, but he helped get others on board with voting for the Iraq War, who lied about his arrest in South Africa during apartheid when Nelson Mandela was freed. He literally lied and said he got arrested going to South Africa when Nelson Mandela was freed, who lied about protesting in civil rights protests. He never protested in any civil rights. You should tell them that you have no spine, that you are incredibly naive to think that Joe Biden actually passionately cares about the policies in the Build Back Better Act. You were incredibly naive to believe he was ever going to fight for it. And you were incredibly naive to believe that he could wrangle Joe Manchin. And some might say, Jordan, that's not That's not going far enough. It's not that they're naive. They know exactly what they're doing. They intentionally rolled over. You know what? I can't get in their minds. What I can tell you is, if this is who's leading the progressives in Congress, we're going to be having the same discussions for the next 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and decade. Because it's not enough. And I've never got into like fraud squad and their sellouts and all this because like I'm 35, not 16. You could call them whatever you want. I've never got into that. I like to look at things on a case-by-case basis. But it's not enough just to support the policies. I think Kshama Sawant, if you look at Kshama Sawant, who I interviewed earlier, and Pramila Jayapal, the difference is very stark. It's not enough to just support the policies. You have to actually have a willingness and a strategy to fight for the policies. You have to actually have a willingness and a strategy. And Kshama Sawant and I talk about this in the second part of our interview, which will air tomorrow on our Rockfin exclusive stream at 4 o'clock. You have to have a willingness to be hated, to be loathed by the corporations, by your own party, by the media. Kshama Sawant, again, this will air tomorrow, says, if you are not hated by big business, by the elite of your own party, by media, you're doing something wrong. So Pramila Jayapal, and by the way, it's not just her, Ro Khanna too. This was entirely predictable. Joe Manchin, in fairness to Joe Manchin, he never promised that he was going to vote for the Build Back Better Act. He said every step of the way, we got to means test this. And, this is going to add to the deficit, mind you, and add to the debt, mind you. The actual infrastructure deal, which is privatization on steroids, that by Congressional Budget Office measures, that added to the debt. He doesn't care about that because the Chamber of Commerce wanted that, because big business wanted that. So he doesn't care about the debt that's added on the infrastructure deal because it's basically a big privatization on steroids deal. It's going to sell public sewer systems, public water systems, public transit systems from public control and sell it to private corporations, i.e. privatization. And the profits or the revenue from those sales, the plan is to use that revenue and profits to build additional infrastructure. It's called asset recycling. Not to bore you, but that's the term. And I want to play this clip because I think it crystallizes why right now exactly what a lot of people expected to happen. And by the way, if people remember, I got in a fight with somebody on Twitter yesterday, saying Jordan, why are you saying this now? You gaslit people that they should cheer for the progressives when they were holding firm. No, that's not true. I literally what I said was they deserve credit when they were holding firm, because for a short time, they were actually for the first time holding the line and holding firm. And I told the audience, there's still a very good chance they will fold in the end. And if they do, I will go after them. And that's what I'm doing now. But I want to play this clip to remind you folks, because again, they're saying, oh no, now we're pivoting away from trying to pass this before the new year. We might pass it in March. They're not going to pass this in March. Once in 2022, the midterms, they're not going to pass this in March. If they do end up passing it, it is going to be so stripped down, there's literally going to be nothing in it worth it. If they do end up passing the Build Back Better Act in March of next year or early next year, it will be so stripped down that it will make Obamacare look like a progressive dream. Okay. It will have means-tested neoliberal policies throughout that are not universal, and it will not do anything to actually structurally help anyone if they end up passing this next year. But I want to play this clip from my interview with Ro Khanna because I think this kind of says it all on where progressives went wrong in this whole, at this point, 5-6 months of nonstop negotiations. Play this clip, Colin. I don't really get why the strategy wouldn't be, and granted, I'm not in DC, maybe I have an outsider's point of view. Why not say, yeah, no, this many people wanted $6 trillion. We've already gone down to $3.5 trillion. Now myself, Senator Sanders, the whole gang is going to West Virginia, is going to Arizona. Instead of trying to negotiate with corporatists, go on these people's front doors and put pressure on them. It seems to me Manchin, Cinema, they never actually have pressure on them because the media kind of slobbers over them as centrists. And the progressives, it doesn't really seem there's any rallying the base.
I'm open to those ideas. We did try to mobilize. We worked with Sarah, Jairam, Saru, Jairam, and One Fair Wage. We tried to work with labor. We tried to work with other organizations in the mobilization with tipped workers, because some tipped workers are only making a little over $2, $2.13. So we did try to mobilize on that. I'm all for ideas on how we can mobilize to get $15 into a must-pass bill. And if there is a mobilization, I agree that that's something we ought to deliver. In terms of mobilization, I think the mobilization we need is to get more progressives into the House elected and into the Senate elected. I'm not sure mobilizing in Manchin's district, where Trump carried it by 30%, is actually what's going to move him on these policies.
Well, Manchin is, he's all of West Virginia, not a district. And I would remind you, Bernie won every county in West Virginia. So it seems to me by the polls, the people of West Virginia want the majority of what's in this. I'll also remind you, Joe Manchin didn't win by that much for Senate back in 2018. He narrowly won. So to be fair, I appreciate Ro Khanna. Coming on. But, this mentality, and, some will say it's naivete. Some will say they're not naive. They know exactly what they're doing. All of this is theater. They pretended that they were going to fight for, half the year, and they knew they were going to fold at the end. They wanted to give the appearance that they were fighting. Whatever your take on it is, at the end of the day, the media wants conflict. The media wants conflict. Notice that when those protesters paddled out to Joe Manchin's little, mansion on the sea, whatever his little yacht that he's on, the media covered that. Notice when protesters literally were basically jumping on the hood of Joe Manchin's Maserati. Yes, he has a Maserati. The media covered that. Why? Because they cover conflict. Notice Joe Manchin didn't seem to like either of those things. Notice the media covered when Kyrsten Sinema was followed into a bathroom, which, by the way, good. Oh, I'm aghast she was followed into a bathroom. Good. The media covered it. You think the media might cover if the progressives, I'm talking about Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, et cetera, actually went on offense against Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema? Not now, months ago. Actually held rallies in West Virginia, actually held rallies in Arizona, where the provisions of the Build Back Better plan, expanding Medicare to include dental, vision, hearing, universal pre-K, child care, child tax credit, actual climate legislation that has teeth and could actually help save planet Earth, are wildly popular in West Virginia and Arizona and popular among Republicans. You think, I don't know. Ro Khanna said, well, I don't know if that will really make a difference. Well, how do you know it wouldn't make a difference? You've never actually tried it. What you have tried is being diplomatic and going on CNN and other outlets and, being cordial and dancing around that Joe Manchin is corrupt and that Kyrsten Sinema is corrupt and that Kyrsten Sinema was literally doing fundraisers in real time with lobbyists and big pharmaceutical groups as she was refusing and blocking the provisions in the bill that would allow Medicare to negotiate with drug companies, i.e. lowering the price of prescription drugs. She was doing fundraisers in real time with the very pharmaceutical companies, blocking that, trying to block that. In other countries, that might be covered by the media. Or in other countries, opposition parties might call that what it is, corruption, pay for play, legalized bribery. None of them, and including Bernie Sanders, would actually go on television and say Joe Manchin is making millions of dollars from a coal company that he's an owner of, that his son is running, I believe. So, yeah, it's kind of pretty damn corrupt that he is blocking or stripping the climate provisions of this bill down to nothing. Because the climate provisions, don't be mistaken, they're talking about, 400 to $500 billion for climate change. Yeah, if you actually look at those policies, it's all tax incentives, neoliberal tax incentives, nothing with teeth. The only things that actually had teeth that could actually be effective, Manchin demanded that it be stripped out. Manchin also demanded that we do carbon capture, retrofitting coal plants in places like West Virginia with carbon capture equipment, which is, if you talk to any climate experts, the most wildly inefficient way to do it, wildly expensive way to do it. It's insane. So I look at Kshama Sawant versus Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, whatever. Yeah, once in office, you have to compromise from time to time. I'm not saying, scorched earth 24/7, but there's a difference between principled compromise and strategic compromise when you've actually gotten real things and being played like a fiddle. It is embarrassing, really, that progressives voted for this shitty little infrastructure deal that's, by the way, not even enough money for the task of fixing our infrastructure. Experts said years ago we needed $2 to $3 trillion to keep up with our crumbling infrastructure. This bill that the Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and others voted for, it's only $500 billion in new money. Of course, Biden's going around making it seem like it's transformative. It's going to change the world. It's not. It'll build some new bridges and stuff like that. It does have some good things to expand rural broadband and things like that. But overall, it's not transformative, and it's not enough money for the scale of our crumbling infrastructure. But they handed away the only leverage they had. And now what's going to happen? Manchin, because President Biden, he's not Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson would not sit in fetal position, lie in fetal position, and allow a senator to block his whole agenda. And Lyndon B. Johnson was terrible in other ways. I give you Vietnam. But at least on, hard-nosed politics, Lyndon B. Johnson would never allow Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema to block his agenda. And if they did try to block his agenda, he would go scorched earth against them publicly and privately. Joe Biden won't do that. Why? Because he's not passionately for any of these policies. That's the thing. Joe Biden, his whole his whole modus operandi is, let's make a deal. What's in the deal? Who knows? Does the deal actually structurally help people? Maybe not. Can we sell it? Yeah, let's sell it. And then let's sell this rump roast deal, this stripped down to the bare bones deal, and then let's brand, look what we did, Trump, and look at Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republican threat. Vote for us. They even called it the Johnson treatment, Chris just said. So I don't know. I get attacked for not being hard enough on the progressives, and then I get attacked for being unfair to them. But I'm just going to say it, with leaders like Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, if these are the people we are expecting to actually have a spine, to actually hold the neoliberal corporate democratic agenda hostage, to actually play hardball and get some victories for the progressives, not just progressives, working people, we're in trouble. Because at this point, clearly it's not enough for them to just share our vision or share or be in agreement on policy. You could be in agreement on policy, but if you don't have the ability, or the willingness to fight, to do a street fight, a political street fight for those policies, if you're not willing to be loathed and hated, and you're willing to basically fold at the end because the heat's getting a little too hot on us, the media is blaming us for Democrats' election losses in Virginia and almost loss in New Jersey, we're in trouble. And I want to be fair, it's not all on Ro Khanna. It's not all on Pramila Jayapal. Frankly, the squad, several of the members, they voted no on the infrastructure bill, but they too were very diplomatic in every interview I saw them do. AOC went on the Sunday morning shows. She bent over backwards not to attack Joe Manchin, not to attack Kirsten Sinema, not to call them what they are, which is corrupt. And that has a negative effect, because when you have the platform on CNN or CBS or whatever, and you could speak to predominantly establishment, neoliberal minded people, and you could point out to them, they might not know the details because MSNBC is not telling them, or CNN is not telling them, or the New York Times is not telling them, but you could give them the details. Oh, Kirsten Sinema, she's in opposition to all these things. Well, look at who she's taking money from and doing fundraisers with right now. The very industries and lobbyists that are trying to block these things because they don't want to lose money. When you aren't willing to call it out, a lot of people won't know. When you aren't willing to make the connection that literally this is corruption, that literally these are not moderates. What they're doing is not moderate. What they're doing is radical. They are literally depriving people of an inhabitable future, of an inhabitable planet. It's radical. They are literally going against policies that have 70 to 80% approval. Child tax credit, expanding Medicare, universal pre-K. They are literally opposed to those things. They are depriving. They are literally going against the will of the people. That's not moderate. That is corrupt. It is radical. If you're not willing to do that, then we need to find people that are willing to do that. And you could call them whatever you want. But I'm calling it the way I see it, which is either they're naive or they can't take the heat. So we shall see. Before I go, I want to read Super Chats. Thank you, Seth, $5. Great reporting, Jordan. Keep punching up. I appreciate it. Mooj, $10. Congratulations to Kshama and the poor and workers of Seattle. Hoping to see more from Socialist Alternative moving forward. Noble Brown, $9.99. Just because we are drowning and no help in sight. I'm glad some are trying. Thank you for the support. Donald Smead, $10. Thank you, Donald. Roger Hess, $10. Thank you, Roger. Cool Blue, $4.99. Thank you. Fly Chomper Fly, $5. Why can't you do short-term contract reporters? We have various events that we would cover in Chicago. It's a great question. So I was actually talking about this to Colin. So here's the thing, Fly Chomper Fly. We could do that, but there's multiple things. Number one, we tend to go live. That is kind of our thing, going live from events and things like that. So the problem is, technologically speaking, I can't provide, like, we have a live view. That's what we go live with when I'm in the field. It's very expensive. We started with a very small, the cheapest one, which is $1,000, and we worked our way up as Status Coup grew to getting the top of the line one, which is $25,000. Not to bore you with the details, but a live view is basically like a mobile satellite that allows you to go live. So if I were to have contract reporters to go live, well, I can't provide a live view to each person. So they would be going live with their phone. And in the past, that has been problematic in terms of connection, internet, audio, all of that. So that is something we need to work out. But we do want to have more freelancers reporting. The second part of that is, honestly, I don't have the staff right now to oversee that. I'm too busy. I cannot oversee a bunch of different freelancers in different parts of the country. That's why I need help. I need more people, because on top of everything I do, I can't then be the go-to person to manage freelancers in other parts of the country. So that's my best answer to you. If you have ideas, technologically, how we could have people go live pretty smoothly and cost effectively, or how to manage that many freelancers, feel free. Info@statuscoup.com. Info@statuscoup.com. I actually want to, the other idea we had was to actually have more people doing stuff in local communities recorded, and then, we could air it, either just post it or air it live. But from things like protests, live events, we want to be live, which is kind of hard if people are going live off their phones. We've had people go live off their phones in the past, freelancers, and it was not optimal. And, people have a short attention span on the internet, as you know. So if they're watching something and the connection's not good or audio is going in and out, they change pretty quickly. So that's part of why. Human 8TY 499. Your coverage is priceless, Jordan. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the kind words. Phil Fellows, $2, a tipped $2 from Rockfin. Thank you, Phil, which is a good segue. Again, let me remind you, tomorrow at 4:00 Eastern, we will be live on Rockfin exclusively. We'll have the second part of my interview with Kshama Sawant, where we get into the squad. And she does not mince words. Let me tell you, she does not mince words. So Kshama Sawant and I will get into the squad, their effectiveness, their ineffectiveness. Tomorrow, I also will be interviewing Michael Leidy, who is the other person featured in that. He is one of the top experts on Medicare, and he's been fighting for Medicare for all before it was even a term. We're going to talk about the fact that the Biden administration is continuing the Trump administration's trend or fight to privatize Medicare, to further privatize Medicare. The Biden administration is literally continuing policies that the Trump administration began to further privatize Medicare. How's that for building back better? So great interview with Michael, and the second part of my interview with Kshama Sawant, that will be at 4:00 Eastern tomorrow on Rockfin. You have to be a Rockfin premium member to watch our Friday Rockfin streams. Last week we had, I think, 4 or 5 new signups. We're trying to get more of you to sign up to our Rockfin too, because as you're seeing on YouTube, our views are suppressed. Our channel is suppressed on YouTube. Kyle Kalinske has actually said openly he's never seen an independent channel as suppressed as Status Coup. So we're trying to get on other platforms and trying to earn more revenue from a variety of different platforms. So that's part of why we're on Rockfin. So if you can sign up, rockfin.com/statuscoup. And before we go, one more reminder that you can now purchase a gift Status Coup membership, by going to statuscoupmember.com/store, statuscoupmember.com/store. We have an option for a 1-year Status Slayer membership, which is $5 a month, or a 1-year Coup de Champion membership, which is $10 a month. Follow the instructions, and you can buy the membership for a friend, family member, your dog, whomever you want. You could buy the gift membership. Colin, did I forget anything?
On the gift membership, no, it's like I said, it's all straightforward. You just purchase the membership, and the only extra step after you buy it is just to email info@statuscoup.com the email you want associated with the new member account, so we can email whoever you're gifting it to with instructions on how to create their account. And also, there's 2 more super chats if you want to read those too.
Oh, thank you. Dan tipped $5. Status Coup. Thank you, Dan, for the tip. Fly Chumper Fly, $5. You are now running recorded interviews, doing live commentary over it. That is still possible with submissions. Well, yes, the Kshama Sawant interview, I did. So that's different though than on the ground stuff. So for example, I could have like a freelance reporter do a recorded interview wherever. Yeah, we could do that for sure. But that's different than like live events. So protests, protests or interviews with a candidate or whatever it is. That's the kind of stuff we generally want to go live from. So yeah, I'm not opposed to having freelance submissions from freelance reporters and local communities, this and that, on a bunch of stories, and they record it and then we post it or air it during a live stream. That's we're not opposed to that at all. It's just a matter of I'm only one person right now. It's just Colin and I. So I literally on top of all the things I'm already doing, I cannot manage like seeking out reporters in the local community, managing them. We would also have to vet like what they're doing, make sure their facts are right. It's not so simple as just like, oh, put out a tweet and people will submit things. Like I already am working 16 hours a day, so I need help. And I need somebody who could manage that. So that's part of it. I'm not trying to make excuses. That's the truth. Like right now, I'm literally trying to do live streams at least 3-4 times a week. I'm working on 2 investigative stories in the background. Colin and I are doing a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff, like a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you don't know about. So there's only so many hours in a day. And I'm going on the ground this week alone. I went to cover the Julian Assange event and Amazon last night. So, there's only so much one person could do. Part of what I'm hoping I could do, part of what we're hoping we could do, I'd like to bring on a marketing person. So not to get into details, but currently working on that. And I'm hoping to bring on a producer. And a producer would also be one of the people that I would lean on to manage what you're talking about, submissions from reporters, things like that. And the other thing also is, I'm just going to keep it real. A lot of times you have people that are more, activists who try to do like reporting and stuff, but it's really too much activist, if you know what I mean. So that's another thing, trying to find people that like have some journalism experience, or a young person who might not have a lot of journalism experience, but at least like I've literally had people submit things to me that like helped organize a protest and then went to cover the protest they helped organize. Yeah, no, you got to pick one or the other, either activism or journalism. Like I don't organize protests I cover. I'm not involved with the things I cover. I just cover it, if that makes sense. But hey, I'm open to ideas. So definitely feel free. Email info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. If you have ideas to have us do that. So we got another one. Hysteric Raider, $5. Bernie should have kept pushing back on his friend about screwing Medicare during the debates because now he's actually doing it. Bernie should have done a lot of things. And that's another one that I get criticism for defending Bernie too much when I've criticized him again and again. Bernie politically is a visionary, and he has done a lot to fight for working people. He's done a whole lot to even create a progressive movement in this country. But politically, as a candidate, he was very, very weak. I said it in 2016. It was unfortunately in 2020, and that's not just my opinion. That's sources on his campaign that I had in 2016 and 2020. Plenty of sources on both the 2016 and 2020 campaign. He was weak and not willing to fight, and not willing. He would go up to a certain line, but never be willing to cross it. And that's kind of similar to what we're seeing with the elected progressives right now. So that's where we're at. All right, folks. Thank you for watching. Once again, we'll be live tomorrow at 4:00 Eastern on Rockfin. So I hope you'll sign up as a Rockfin Premium member. Part 2 of our interview with Kshama Sawant will be up. And we'll also have an interview with Michael Lighty on Biden's attempt to privatize Medicare. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for Kshama Sawant for the interview we aired today. And please, one more ask. We really, really hope this holiday season, if it's in your budget, either you will become a member yourself. That's statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month, statuscoup.com/join. And if you're already a member and have it within your budget, you could buy a gift membership for friends and family. So yourself, statuscoup.com/join, or if you want to purchase a gift membership for a friend, family member, animal, statuscoupmember.com/store. Thank you for watching. Peace out.